No one saw her hop closer on a quiet afternoon, no one noticed the way people subtly shifted away, and no one expected that a single, simple question would break a man who thought he had already lost everything. Stay with this story until the end, because what happened next changed two lives forever. If stories about unseen people, unexpected kindness, and real human moments move you, make sure to subscribe now, because stories like this remind us who we really are. The bench sat beneath a wide oak tree at the edge of a small public park, the kind of park people passed through without really seeing. It was early evening, that in-between hour when the sun softened and parents gathered their children, when joggers slowed down, and when the world felt briefly less rushed. On that bench sat a man named Daniel, his shoulders slightly hunched, his eyes fixed on the ground in front of him. He wasn't scrolling on his phone or watching anyone pass by. He was thinking, though he wished he could stop. Daniel was 36, a single father to a 6-year-old boy named Noah, who was currently at a neighbor's apartment finishing homework. Daniel came to the park alone these days, not because he enjoyed solitude, but because it was the only place where he could breathe without feeling watched or judged. Life had narrowed for him in the past 2 years. His wife, Emily, had died after a sudden illness that no one saw coming, leaving behind grief that settled into Daniel's chest like a permanent weight. The world had kept moving, but he felt frozen in a moment he couldn't escape. People saw Daniel as quiet, distant, maybe even cold. What they didn't see were the sleepless nights, the silent arguments with memories, or the fear that he was failing his son by not being whole anymore. He tried to be strong, but strength felt like something other people had. He had learned to sit still, to take up as little space as possible, and to expect nothing from strangers. Around him the park buzzed gently with life. A group of teenagers laughed loudly near the basketball court. A couple walked hand in hand, sharing earbuds and whispering secrets. A woman pushed a stroller while talking animatedly on her phone. Everyone had somewhere to be, someone to share the moment with. Everyone, except the girl who stood a few feet away from Daniel's bench. She was small, maybe 10 or 11, with dark hair tied back in a loose ponytail. One leg ended just above the knee, replaced by a worn prosthetic that didn't quite match the rhythm of her movements. She leaned slightly to one side as she hopped forward, careful but practiced, as if she had learned long ago how to move through a world that rarely slowed down for her. Her name was Lily. No one noticed her at first, or if they did, they pretended not to. People often did that, thinking it was kinder to ignore than to stare. Lily had learned the difference early. She could feel when eyes slid past her too quickly, when conversations paused and resumed a beat too fast, when smiles were polite but distant. She had learned to be quiet, to take less, to ask for nothing. Lily had come to the park alone. Her grandmother lived in the apartment complex across the street and allowed Lily to come here every evening, trusting that Lily knew how to keep herself safe. Lily liked this park because it made her feel almost normal. Here everyone was doing something. No one was watching her all the time. Or at least that's what she told herself. She had already made one slow loop around the park when she noticed the bench under the oak tree. There were several benches, but most were occupied by couples or groups. This one had only one person sitting at one end, leaving space on the other. Lily hesitated. She had learned that empty space didn't always mean available. She stood there for a moment, her hands clasped together, her eyes fixed on the ground. Her heart beat faster than it should have for such a simple thing. Asking a question shouldn't feel like climbing a mountain, but for Lily, it always did. She had been told no more times than she could count. Sometimes people said no kindly, sometimes awkwardly, and sometimes without words at all. Daniel didn't notice her at first. His mind was far away, replaying a memory of Noah laughing earlier that morning, then suddenly asking why his mom didn't laugh anymore. Daniel had smiled, answered gently, then gone into the bathroom and closed the door so his son wouldn't hear him cry. It was Lily's voice that pulled him back. The word, "Can I sit here?" The words were soft, almost apologetic. Daniel looked up surprised. For a split second, his mind struggled to catch up with reality. He saw the girl standing there, saw her cautious posture, saw the prosthetic leg, and felt a strange tightening in his chest. His first instinct was panic, not because of her, but because he was suddenly afraid of doing the wrong thing. Afraid of saying something that might hurt her, afraid of being awkward, afraid of being reminded that the world was full of pain he couldn't fix. Before he could respond, Lily's eyes flickered, already preparing for rejection. She had seen this pause before. Adults often needed a moment to decide how to handle her. "Sorry," she added quickly. "I can go somewhere else." Something inside Daniel broke open then, quietly but completely. He recognized that look. He had seen it in the mirror. The look of someone bracing for disappointment, already apologizing for existing. "Hey," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. "You don't need to apologize. Of course you can sit." Lily blinked, surprised. She nodded, carefully moving to the other end of the bench. She lowered herself slowly, adjusting the prosthetic with practiced ease. For a moment they sat in silence, two strangers sharing space without knowing why it felt important. Daniel glanced at her from the corner of his eye. He noticed the scuffed sneakers, the faint dirt on her knees, the way she kept her hands folded tightly in her lap. She reminded him of Noah, not in appearance, but in vulnerability. In the way children carried things too heavy for them without complaint. "My name's Daniel," he said finally. "I'm Lily," she replied, her voice steadier now. They sat like that, watching the park. Lily swung her good leg slightly, a nervous habit. Daniel realized he didn't feel as heavy as he had a few minutes ago. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt shared. After a while, Lily spoke again. "Do you come here a lot?" "Most evenings," Daniel said. "It helps me think." Lily nodded. "I come here too. It's easier than staying inside." Daniel looked at her, then really looked at her. "Why's that?" She shrugged. "Inside is quiet. Quiet makes my thoughts loud." The words hit him harder than he expected. He laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it was painfully true. "Yeah," he said. "I get that." They sat for another few minutes, the sun dipping lower. Lily felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. She hadn't expected this. She had expected maybe a yes, maybe a no, but not understanding, not this feeling of being seen without being examined. "You have a kid?" Lily asked suddenly, nodding toward a small toy car peeking out of Daniel's jacket pocket. Daniel smiled for the first time that day, a real smile. "Yeah, a boy. He's 6. My mom used to say 6 was the age when kids start asking the hardest questions," Lily said casually. Daniel froze. "Used to." Lily's voice softened. "She's gone. It's just me and my grandma now." Daniel felt the air shift between them. He understood now why her question had felt so heavy, why her presence had cut through his grief like a blade and a balm at the same time. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "It's okay," Lily replied. "I mean, it's not okay, but you know." He did know. The twist came quietly, the way real-life twists often do. A woman approached them, her face tight with concern. "Lily," she said sharply, "I told you not to bother strangers." Lily stiffened. "I wasn't bothering him," she said, her voice small. The woman turned to Daniel, her eyes apologetic but wary. "I'm sorry. She doesn't always understand boundaries." Daniel felt something rise in him, protective and unexpected. "She didn't bother me," he said firmly. "She just asked if she could sit." The woman hesitated, then relaxed slightly. "I'm her aunt. I just worry." "I get that," Daniel said. The aunt nodded and walked away, casting one last glance at Lily. Lily stared at the ground, shame flooding her face. This was the part she hated, the part where adults spoke over her, decided things for her without asking. Daniel leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said gently. Lily swallowed. People say that a lot, but they still move away. Daniel didn't have an answer for that. Instead, he did something unexpected. He shifted closer, closing the space between them. Not too close, just enough to show he wasn't going anywhere. The park began to empty as the sky darkened. Lily's grandmother eventually appeared, smiling when she saw Lily laughing softly at something Daniel said. The grandmother paused, watching them, then approached. "Thank you," she said to Daniel. "She doesn't laugh like that much anymore." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "Thank you," he replied. "I didn't realize how much I needed this." After Lily left, Daniel sat alone again, but the bench felt different. The park felt different. The world felt slightly less cruel. That night, Daniel told Noah about Lily. Noah listened intently, then said, "You should invite her to the park again." Daniel smiled. "I hope I see her again." They did see each other again, and again. The bench under the oak tree became a meeting place, not just for Daniel and Lily, but eventually for Noah, for Lily's grandmother, for small conversations that turned into shared meals, for grief that softened when carried together. The final twist came months later, when Daniel attended a school assembly and saw Lily on stage, standing tall with her prosthetic, speaking confidently about resilience. She scanned the audience, spotted Daniel and Noah, and smiled. A smile that said, "You mattered." Daniel realized then that her simple question had saved him just as much as his answer had saved her. Sometimes the smallest questions change the biggest lives. If this story moved you, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. What part of the country are you in right now?